All right, welcome to week 7, class 2, overall class number 12. And I think we're going to be trying to delve a little bit further into some JavaScript learning, just to get that side of programming down pat, because this will really set you on your way to understanding how a computer works, how you can control a computer and make a computer do whatever you need it to do, to all sorts of cool effects. Right now, for example, we're learning it in terms of the browser and in terms of your website, your web page. But the same concepts will be very useful to you when you work on the server side, on the back end, or if eventually you go into app development or game development, or you're going to make some desktop applications or whatever it is, you're always going to have these same concepts of variables and functions and performing operations with operators and loops. And all that kind of stuff is going to be the same kind of concept in different situations and different environments. So it's very important that we get all that kind of stuff down pat. Number variables, strings, showing messages, concatenating strings, putting them together one with another one, putting placeholders, variables as placeholders, such as your name is X, and X can be anything. It could be whatever is inside of that variable, etc., etc. All these concepts are important to get comfortable with. So I found here an interesting section in the Free Code Camp JavaScript tutorials. Not the basic JavaScript, basic algorithm scripting. I think this might be interesting. Maybe let's do one or two of these exercises, because kind of like what we did yesterday with really learning and experiencing a loop and looping through an array, which was a very, very important fundamental of understanding how programming works and how you're going to be doing that sort of thing at some point for various reasons and purposes. So here they also have a bunch of different interesting exercises like that. Let's look into this one. This looks interesting. Reverse a string. Okay. Reverse a string. Reverse the provided string. Means the task at hand that we have to figure out how to do is, if you're given a string, let's say, for example, you use the prompt function. If you guys remember prompt, that shows a message to the user and asks them to type something in. Or, for example, you don't even need a prompt necessarily. You can even do it in the HTML way, which is to use a input. Let's look for MDN input. How many of you guys have played around with some input elements in your HTML, which is this right over here? I see some hand raised. That's cool. It's good to test around and play around with these different elements of HTML, practice them a lot, and you get more and more familiar as you go. Very cool, you guys that tried it out. So yeah, it's this element that you create in your HTML, and what it does is it makes this little, this little box that you can type in some stuff. It's called a input control. It has a few fancy names, but the idea is anything that is interactive that you can put some information into it. And there's a bunch of these. There's an input that's made for text, right? And then there is, let's look for MDN input checkbox. Okay, so this is not at all like somewhere where you interact by typing something, but you are putting in some information, like you're saying yes to this, no to that. That's a piece of information that you can manipulate, you can control by clicking it. So you can either type in text, or you can put in checkboxes, or let's see one more example. Let's say a select box, which is a drop-down menu. Right, so this is another kind of thing where you could select an option and you have a drop-down list and you can select this one or this one or this one. Little tidbit actually, while we're on the subject of the select drop-down menu, this is most commonly used as a drop-down where you select one thing out of a list. That's how this one works. You can only select one. You see, if I selected cat over here and now I go and I select parrot, cat will be unselected, and instead parrot will be selected. However, there is another way how to use the select box. I'm not sure if any of you guys come across this yet, but it is known as the MDN input. No, it's not input actually. It's select multiple. Okay, so this one is a little bit different. Oh, we're landed on the same page, but I wonder if he's going to show us the multiple example. Yeah, here we go. If you add one more attribute in the select element, it's just the attribute of multiple. It doesn't even have a equals with quotes. It's just like you're declaring this element that it has the attribute of multiple. If it has multiple, what that means is that you're allowing the user to select several of them, not just one, but multiple. And this is what it looks like. I can select dog, I can select cat, or I can select dog and cat. What I did on my keyboard was I clicked control. I clicked on one and then I control clicked the second one and it selected both of them. Or you can probably also click and drag. I'm going to click and drag. Yeah, by clicking and dragging, it selected both of them. There's also something you can do to disable an option. This one, the third one down here, hamster, is disabled. I can't even click it. I can't select it. It's kind of grayed out. You do that by adding the attribute of disabled into the option element. Anyway, there's a bunch of cool little things like that that you can discover and figure out how to make good, nice controls and pieces of your website with HTML. Anyway, so instead of making a prompt, which is a function that you call in JavaScript that pops up to the user in a kind of like not exactly fancy way inside of your page, it's this like overlay pop-up that says, hey, please type in some text or whatever, and you type it into that pop-up. Instead, you can make an input field in the middle of the page where you ask the user, hey, type something in here. And then by using JavaScript, or to make things easier, by using jQuery, you can do cool effects and cool stuff that happens when the user types something into the box, as soon as he's finished typing, or as soon as he clicks enter or something like that, or as soon as he clicks a submit button, then you can do something with that text. You can grab it out of the element where he typed it in, and you can do similar things. But let's say for simplicity, if you pop up a string, a prompt, and you say, give me a string, and the user can type in anything. The user can type in 1, 2, 3, or hello world, or anything, right? And now our task is to reverse it. Okay, so if they typed in 1, 2, 3, you need to make it show 3, 2, 1. And if they typed in anything else, it needs to have the exact whatever it was in reverse. So if it's hello, it should be O-L-L-E-H, right? O-L-L-E-H. Whatever string is typed in, you should be able to give it back exactly backwards. So how would you guys do this? How do we, here's what they want us to do. Oh, he gives us a suggestion over here. You may need to turn the string into an array before you can reverse it. Your result must be a string. So they're suggesting us, they're giving us a hint that if we work with an array over here, that might help us to reverse our string. I'm going to go into some ways how we can do this by going into an array, or maybe even without using an array, and we'll explore a few things like that. But again, doing this exercise, taking a string and figuring out how to reverse it, is a good thing to go through to realize and understand variables, loops, arrays, and really get comfortable with these ideas. And ideally, you guys play around with this and find some more exercises here that you guys find fun, and going through them and finding the challenge of like it's a puzzle, it's a riddle, and you have to figure out how to solve it. And then by the end, you test it and it works. It has that very cool feeling of like, yeah, I got this, I figured this out. So now the riddle is, how do you take any string that someone gives you and make it be the exact reverse? So here he's showing us that what he expects to happen is that we might make some sort of function, and this function does the magic act of reversing the string. And what the exercise is asking us is that it's expecting us to just, he should be able to call this function with whatever string it may be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, 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 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, hello world, whatever string you might pass into it, it should magically, he expects it to perform the magic for me. Like, he doesn't even have to care what you do in the function. You can do 1,000 things, 1,000,000 things, whatever you do whatever you want in your function. The end result should be that what comes out of it, what is returned at the end of a function, is whatever you passed into it, except exactly in reverse. So what can we fill up inside of this function in order to make that whatever you pass into it becomes reversed? So first of all, let's quickly recap about functions. Functions is this idea of a little program inside of your program. So your program is like a bunch of instructions. It starts over here. And the computer reads through them, the first instruction, the next instruction, the next, etc., etc. And usually it just goes top to bottom in order. But sometimes you tell the computer, hey, here's another sub list of instructions. Here's like a sub menu or a subcategory, or like another separate package of programming code. And that is something that I'm going to use later. Some other time I'm going to jump into that. But first, prepare a little list of instructions inside of our overall list of instructions. And then at some point, part of your instructions is go do that second list and then come back. And now go do that other list and then come back. So really, we're always doing one main bottom line primary instruction list. You know, it starts at the ground floor, so to speak, and it starts over here, and we do one line of code, another line of code. That's where everything starts. But from there, one of the instructions could be prepare another list of instructions, such as what we're doing over here. We're creating a function. A function is a little mini program inside of our program. And then here on line 13, 14, 15, etc., part of our instructions are, hey, go do those other instructions. So from within our main list of instructions, we're telling the computer, go jump over there and do those instructions. And then when you're finished, come back and continue our main list of instructions. And you can do some of these, right? Once you're inside of a list of instructions, the instruction could be, go do the 10th list. And inside of the 10th list of instructions, go do the 50th list of instructions. Chances are, in some complicated programs, there are actually many functions all over the place. And you're jumping inside of one, and you're jumping out of it. And then you're jumping inside of one, which jumps into a second one, which jumps into a third one. And then you come back to the beginning, etc., etc. You're always jumping around all over the place. So this is the idea of a function, creating a separate list of instructions that we're going to jump into. And you do that by writing the word function. You write a unique name for your function, since every mini program, every sub list of instructions to do needs to have some sort of name to it, so that we can say, hey, do that list of instructions. Oh, do that other list of instructions. So each one of these has to have its own unique name. This one over here is called reverse string. It's a very nice descriptive name to explain what is this mini program going to do. It's always important to name things in a useful manner. And finally, inside of these opening and closing braces, you can start writing all the instructions as if it's regular JavaScript, like you used to do back when you were in the ground floor. You can create a variable or whatever you can do. The same stuff happens inside of a function. You can do that same kind of stuff inside of there. So you also have this little parentheses over here, which is what makes it into a function. And you can also pass something inside of the function. So the difference between that is that either you could say, hey, go and do that other list of instructions. That's it, point blank, that's all there is to it. Or, hey, please go do that other list of instructions and take this with you, because you're going to need this when you do that other list of instructions. That's the idea of these parentheses over here. Inside of the parentheses, you can pass a variable. You can pass multiple variables, as many as you need. And whatever you pass into it, you can then use inside of the function, and it'll be a useful piece of information that you need to work with, that you could calculate, that you can compute, you can concatenate with a string, whatever you need to do with it, you can pass something into it so that he has it to work with. Actually, this requires a little bit more explanation, really. So let me harp on that for just a second. You see, the important thing to realize is that there really is a big difference between the ground floor of your program and kind of the inner floor where you jumped into a function. And the difference is that they have different scopes. This is something called scope. The idea is basically that every level of function code, every level of where you have code in JavaScript that's executing, it has its own kind of shelf, it has its own kind of storage room of variables and actions that it does, and things that exist in its world. So for example, in this code over here, we have two worlds going on. We have the outer world of the overall program at the bottom level of our code. And then there's a second world, which is what goes on in this function. And there are some differences where some things cross over between worlds and some things don't cross over between worlds. And some things kind of step on each other between the worlds. So in a way, it's better to keep things separate. Whatever goes on in the outer world belongs to the outer world, and whatever goes on inside of the function, inside of the inner world, belongs inside of the inner world. Here's an example. If I made var x equals 10 in the outer world, the main area where I wrote my code in JavaScript, well, then it's considered that this x variable kind of belongs to this outer world outside here. That's its scope. That is its world where it came from, and that's where it kind of belongs. If you create over here var x equals 100, in a way, this is actually a separate variable. This is something else entirely. You can create a completely different variable x that belongs only in this function. When you jump inside of that list of instructions to do, that's when you have your own variable x that has 100 in it. And when you come back to the outer world, we're back to our variable x, which has 10 in it, actually. And this is where there's a bit of a difference between if you create a variable with let, which is actually recommended these days if you use JavaScript ES6, which is the most recent version of JavaScript. If you're using the latest version of Chrome or of Firefox, you can probably safely start using ES6. All the major browsers have it, and it's working properly. So let is a way of saying var, but it's slightly different. Var says make a variable that could maybe cross over between worlds. Let explicitly says make a variable that only belongs in this place and nowhere else. So here, when I'm using let, then we're for sure, I'm pretty sure, by the way, I haven't even practiced this myself, and I have to brush up on how well I know my scope rules. But I'm pretty sure this means this variable x only belongs in this outer world, and you're not going to have it inside of this function. When you jump into this function and you start running that code over there, this variable x does not exist. And when you create a separate variable x over there, it's a completely different variable. You can put the number 100 in it. You can change it to have the number 777 in it. That all belongs inside of the world of the function. And once you're done with executing that function and you come back out into the outer world, then we're back to having a variable x that has 10 in it and no other difference. But wait a minute. I said x equals 100. And I also said x equals 777. Shouldn't that change the variable, right? Look, this variable was 10 before, but now we changed it into 100 and we changed it into 777. Well, actually, as it turns out, these are two separate worlds. This variable belongs out here in the open world, and this variable belongs in here inside the function. So don't be surprised if you do some things inside of functions and suddenly, unexpectedly, this variable didn't even change, and that variable disappeared. How does that work? Why does that happen? Generally, you should be aware that there are these rules of scope. Scope means that every variable kind of belongs in a certain world, where it came from, where it was created, where you created it, where you declared the variable. It is kind of restricted to existing inside of that scope. When you use var, it's a little bit more loose, and the rules over there are not straightforward enough that I myself hardly ever bother fully learning and knowing exactly how it works. It is useful to know, though. Here's how it works, basically. Var x is kind of a half floating around variable that exists out here in the outer world. But when you step into the function, you can still use it, actually. If you just say x, times 8 or whatever, you're going to get 10 times 8, which is 80. That is going to happen. However, later on, if you create a new variable x, that is actually going to step over the previous one. And you're only going to have an x that belongs in this world. And when you're done, you're going to go back to the previous x unchanged, untouched from the outer world that only has the number 10 in it. So this is just a general overview of the rules of scope. I'm actually going to go into this maybe a little bit later if you have time, because these are important things to know. This idea that depending on which level in the program you're in, if you're in this function or that function, or if you're outside of any function, different variables kind of belong into their own worlds. And you should be careful, and you should exercise what happens if I try using a variable from this function in the other function. What happens if I use something that I created before and now I changed it? Does it change? Does it not change? Is it overstepped by the one that's inside? Or is it actually overwritten and it's changing based on what I did inside the function? Play around with that and you'll figure out the rules of when your variable exists in the inner world and when it doesn't. And in this case, now we understand why it's useful to pass something into a function. You see, let's say if in this function I wanted to do something with x. Yeah, but x, is a variable that exists out here. I can't play around with x in this function. X doesn't exist. What is x? X is undefined. We never heard of x. What do you mean you never heard of x? I created x out here. Yeah, but that belongs outside there in that scope, in that world. When you jumped into this function, this is a whole new scope. It's a separate frame of reference over here. We never created a variable x over here in this world here, especially if you use let. In that case, for sure, I think, pretty sure, that belongs only out there in the outer world, and inside this function, you don't have a variable x. So in that case, how am I supposed to get any work done if I jump inside of a separate list of instructions to do every time I jump to another function, where in that function, nothing else exists? Suddenly, all of my variables that I made don't exist. All of my other variables that I had before, they're just gone. I can't touch them. I can't use them. What use is it? Well, there's actually a reason and a purpose to it. Every function should have a specific task that it's meant to do. You give it some input, and you get some output out of it, and that's it. Your functions shouldn't have like access to everything and be able to change all the variables, and you can tell it to touch this and to touch that, and it messes with everything. It's actually seen as a bad programming practice to be able to jump in and out of functions, and all the functions have access to all the variables. That is generally seen as a bad idea. Instead, have a function which only does one specific useful task. Do it succinctly, do it quickly. If you need more work done, make a second function for it. Maybe make one function that does one specific thing, and then make another function that does another specific thing. Some people say that like a recommended idea for how to know if you're making a function that does too much or goes on for too long is if it fits pretty much the height of your screen. If your function starts at the top of your code and ends at the end of the screen at the bottom, and it fills up, however many lines of code might be there, depending how big your font is or how big your screen is, that might be 20 lines of code, 40 lines of code, something like that. That's maybe the good recommended amount of how big your function should be. And your function should do one specific task, be done with it, and return the results. A function is a mini program. You give it something to work with, it does some things with it, and it gives back to you a result. That's it. So you have to give something to the function. Sometimes you don't give anything to a function. You just tell a function, do a thing. Please do this thing. So then you have just empty parentheses. You don't have to give him anything to work with. He just does an alert, or he changes something on the page, or he just does something. Just doing something doesn't necessarily need any parameters. You don't have to pass something into it. But if you need him to work with something like, hey, search this name or calculate these numbers, okay, well, then I need a string name. I need several numbers to work with. So then you pass stuff into the function. You put it in the parentheses. And here, when you call the function by name, you pass something into the parentheses. Whatever you pass into these parentheses magically turns up as this variable in your function. So over here, we're calling this function reverse string, and we're passing in a string to become this str variable that's put into the parentheses over there. And this str variable, I guess it's short for string, this string variable is going to magically have whatever you pass into it each time around. Here on line 17, we're going to jump into the function. We're going to jump inside of reverse string. We're going to execute all the code in it from beginning to end, line by line, one by one. And in that case, the string variable will have hello inside of it. Next, on line 18, we're going to do it all over again. We're going to jump back into that function, execute all of its instructions all over again, top to bottom, one by one. And in that case, str is going to be 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 5, 3, etc., etc. It's going to have this text in it. So the first time, it's going to work with the word hello. The second time, it's going to work with the other word, etc., etc. Whatever you pass into it magically becomes this variable str. And then at the end of the function, you can just at some point decide and say, okay, I'm done executing this list of instructions, just return. We learned how that could happen inside of an if statement. Maybe you might even have some more code inside of this function, if maybe after here you have like some other stuff going on, some other variables, because this is inside of an if statement, etc., etc. But at some point you can just say, okay, I'm done executing this function. Jump out, cancel, go back to wherever we were before we started this function. And sometimes we can do that. We can return our way out of the function and also bring something along with us. Return a variable, return a number, return a string, return some variable that we worked with in this function while we were inside here. Whatever it is that you want to return, you can return. You can return an array, you can return an object, you can return a function, you can return a string, a number, whatever it is you want to return, that's going to be the output, what comes out as a result of calling your function. And then you can do something with it. Like, for example, I could say var results equals whatever comes out of calling this function. Now, if this function returned, let's say, a number 5 for some reason, let's say the variable str was like 5, then right now, after I call this function, the variable results equals to whatever came out of that function, a string of 5. I can take that and I can maybe alert it. Alert results. And that's going to show an alert box that shows the text 5. Again, why? What happened here? Because on line 17, I not only called the function reverse string, I also said, hey, whatever comes out of calling that function, could be a number, could be a string, could be anything, whatever comes out of there, stuff that, using the assignment operator, the equals, stuff whatever comes out of there into this variable. Okay, cool. So whatever comes out of there, whatever is going to be returned, that's going to be an expression that's going to be assigned into this variable that we can do more stuff with it later, etc., etc. So now what we're trying to do is, oh, and if you want, you can do it all in one go. You can say alert and right away call that function. So whatever comes out of that function immediately in one line, in one phrase, right away goes into the alert, and the alert will just show that to the screen. So in this case, it's going to right away, without doing the extra step of creating a variable, putting it inside of a variable, and then alerting the variable. We're skipping that whole variable step, the results variable we did before, and we're just going straight into just alert whatever comes out of calling this function. In a way, if you see over here, guys, we're calling two functions. We're calling one function inside of a function. First, we're calling reverse string, and then we're saying whatever comes out of reverse string, call the alert function and give him that. Whatever comes out of the first function goes into the call of the second function. But enough about functions. Let's actually go inside here and make some magic happen inside of this function that will take whatever was given and reverse it. So let's think about this. We have a string such as hello. Okay. So we have now a string. Let's just make ourselves a little comment here. We have the string hello, and our goal is that we should result with OLLEH. So how do we get from this to this? How do we take this string and make it so that we have this string? I don't know. Any ideas? Just let's hear some random thoughts from some of you guys. What do you think we can do to kind of take this string, just based on the knowledge that you guys know already by now? What would you try to think of to figure out how do I take this string and reverse it and make it into this string? If anyone has any ideas. And I'm thinking of one particular sneaky answer, which that's the answer that I'm looking for. If someone can figure out the easy way out, the easy, lazy way out. How do I figure out how to take a string hello and reverse it into another string? Okay, someone says array and loop. Okay, we're definitely going to get into that. That is the way to go. We need array and loop. It's not the full answer. How do you loop? What do you do with an array? Someone says get the results from pop and putting it into unshift. Okay, that's a little bit more details of how to do it. Call the function reverse string. Yes, but what is the reverse string supposed to do? How are we supposed to reverse it? What do we do in order to reverse the string? Convert it to an array and then call reverse. Yes, it's true. An array has a function reverse. that might be useful here. We may not have even known about that function reverse, though. How would we know about this function reverse? What's the sneaky answer I'm looking for? The laziest answer. Who can come up with an even lazier answer than that? No, I did not tell you guys about it, but I did tell you guys how to be lazy and find these answers. I almost gave it away there. Google it. That's it. You just Google it. That's how you find the answer. Go to Google and type JavaScript reverse string. And you just copy paste whatever is there, and that's it. That is the easiest way how to do it. And you'll open up one page and you'll scroll down, you'll see some solutions, how they do it. And you'll open up another page and you'll find some others, some other solutions. But also, of course, obviously it's going to work and it's going to have the results that you want. But we're going to go obviously a little bit further than that. And we're going to try to see what is that code doing and how does it work and why does it work? Because by going through the logical steps of trying to reverse the string, you're actually really training your mind to understand programming and to really get used to it and to think like a computer, think like a programmer, so that you can solve your own problems in your own way. At some point down the line, you'll get used to these concepts so much that you'll be able to sit back in your chair and think, I can figure this out. I have a bunch of characters in a string, and I need to make them in reverse. I can figure this out. I know how to pull in different pieces of information that I know about already and make it work. But yes, don't forget, always Google. Always start with the simplest, most laziest solution, so to speak, because starting from there, copying, pasting something that works, first of all, you can get some work done sooner. And second of all, turn on the debugger, put in a breakpoint, step through it little by little, and see what it does. How does it take the string and make it in reverse? How does it do that? I want to see that happening. I want to try to see if I can figure that out myself. Okay, so I'm going to try a brute force method over here. Kind of a very simple-minded kind of way of thinking about it. Meaning I'm looking at a string and I'm seeing this is a bunch of characters. It's a character H, a character E, a character L, a character L, and a character O. I also happen to know from our last class that when you have a string, you can refer to each individual character by using this square bracket notation. Let me open up the console real quick over here. Kind of like an array. It's not really an array, so we're not actually using arrays in this solution right now. We're just saying var my string equals hello. Okay, so anytime I type my string, the value of it is hello. I can alert my string, you know, etc. All the usual things that we could do. And I could say my string character number 0 by using it as if it's an array, that the first character is this and the second character is that. So again, it's not really an array, it's a string. It has a bunch of characters one after the other. But JavaScript lets you use it as if it's an array. Give me character number 0, give me character number 1, give me character number 4, etc., etc. You have the whole sequence of letters over there. What happens if I do too high? Character number 5, undefined. This string does not have a character number 5. It only has characters 0 up to 4. So using only that, having a string of characters that I can refer to with this index number to refer to that particular letter, I want to try to create a string starting from the last letter and going to the letter before that, and going to the letter before that, and the letter before that, etc., etc. And that will help me create a string that starts with the last letter and goes all the way through to the first letter. It's a very kind of brute force way of, like, how would you do this physically? If you had 5 cards, one had an H on it and one had an E, L, L, O, right? What would you do? You would take the last one, you would put it in the beginning, you would take the second to the last one, you put it by the second place, etc., etc. And you would basically, one by one, reorder it to be backwards. So why not do that? Let's make a for loop. And in this case, I'm going to start with a counter that starts at the end of the string. How long is the string so that I know how long do I have to go? Every string has actually a length property. You can do dot length and it tells you this string is this long. It's a pretty nifty tool, actually. If you have a bunch of text and you want to know how many characters is in this text, how long is it? So you can type a whole bunch of text, and then right afterwards, just do dot length. And there you go, 90. I just typed 90 characters, including the spaces and everything from beginning to end. Dot length. Every string has the dot length property. So I'm going to start counting from var I equals string. That's the variable that we passed into this function, right? We called in to go into this list of instructions to do, and we said here, take this with you for the way. Take this string, which what we actually passed in was hello. So we have this variable str over here, and I'm saying however long it is, it could be it's 100 characters long, 1,000, who knows how long it may be. Right now we happen to know some inside information because we're writing the code. We happen to know that it's hello. But when your program is actually running, who knows how long the string could be? We need to be prepared for all scenarios. So however long it is, string length, I want to go up until that length. Okay, so I created a variable that starts with, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, this guy starts off by being 5. I is basically equals to 5 at this point because I set it. Oh, well, that's if we have the word hello or any other word that has exactly 5 characters in it. In other, oh, I misspelled it. Length. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we start counting from number 5, and we want to go down all the way to 0. Well, actually, given the offset 0 issue, we have to start from 5, going all the way down to 1, or we have to start from 4 and go all the way down to 0. You can pick and choose whichever one you want, and each one you'll have to handle appropriately. Second place, we have our condition. How do we know whether we need to continue going or we're done? I'm going to say if I is less than 1. Okay, that means I wanted to count down from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And then I don't want it to go down to 0. Or equally, I could have done, however long it is, take the computer version number of that, which is 1 off by 0 because it always starts by 0. So I'm going to say, however long it is, minus 1. So instead of it being 5, it's going to start off by being 4. And in that case, I want it to be no less than 0. It could be either of those two, and you can, either one of them will have that ideal effect. The idea is I want to count down from 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, or I want to count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I'll have to minus 1 later on. So you can pick and choose whichever way you want to go. And finally, what do we do each time in order to count down so that my I variable doesn't stay stuck at number 4 the whole time? What do we do so that it counts down to 3, to 2, to 1? Any suggestions? How do I count down this I variable? What is the operator that I use? Minus, minus. Very good. Okay, I minus, minus. All right. While we're talking about minus, minus, let's just quickly take a little detour, something important. The difference between minus, minus, I. That means you put the minus, minus before the I. Or if you do I minus, minus, there is actually a difference. So let's have an example right over here. Let's say I say, let x equals 10. And then I say alert, and I say minus, minus x. And then I do the same thing, I alert, but this time I say x minus, minus. Okay? There is going to be a difference over here. In this case, what happens is it's going to alert 9. And also, it's going to end up being 9. So both the alert message is going to show 9, and also the variable x is actually going to be equal to 9. Why? Because this is called the prefix decrement operator. Or if you're doing plus plus, then it would be the prefix increment operator. The idea is that first it goes and it does the thing on the variable. So first, in this case, first it goes and it minuses it by 1. And then it evaluates the expression of what it is. So first of all, it used to be 10. Now it's going to first minus it by 1. And then it's going to give you that result. So it's not going to give you 10, That's what it used to be before you decremented it. Now it's going to give you 9 because first it minused it by 1 and then it's going to give it back to you. And the opposite is true with if you put it afterwards as a postfix, it's called, I think, postfix operator. Right? Let me Google that real quick. JavaScript postfix increment or decrement, same thing. Postfix returns the original value for the increment, decrement, right? There's prefix and postfix. Right? So for whatever reason, they're not calling it the prefix and suffix in JavaScript and programming languages in general. They call it the prefix and postfix. So the idea is that in this case, first it gives you the variable. You want to alert this. You want to evaluate the value of this. The value of this right now is 9. Then after it gave it back to you, it also goes and it decrements it by 1. So it's going to end up being 8. So in this case, it's going to alert whatever it was before, which is still 9. But wait a minute, I'm doing minus to it. That means at this point, it should already be 8. Yeah, but you did it postfix, which means first it's going to give you the value that's in this variable, and then it's going to go and decrement it. So at the end of this operation, x will actually be 8. But what it gave back to you, what it expressed as its expression when you passed it into the alert function, is before it went and decremented itself. So this is the difference between prefix and postfix. If you do it before the variable, it's going to give you the result after it's been operated upon. If you put the operators after the variable, first it's going to give you as if you typed x, just x. And then it's going to go ahead and also, after the fact, it's going to minus the x by 1. That's the difference between prefix and postfix. In this case, it's kind of like you said, x is x minus 1 or x minus equals 1. And then you alerted the value. And whereas in the other case, it's like you just alerted x, and after the fact, you went and you did x minus equals 1 or x equals x minus 1. All right, so that was just a little parentheses regarding the prefix and postfix difference. In this particular case, in our for loop, we were trying to count from 4 going down to 3, 2, 1, 0, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whichever one you prefer. In this case, it's actually not going to matter too much because I'm not using the value of I right now in this second. This would behave just as fine if you did it in prefix or in postfix. It'll have the same effect. In other cases, though, if you do something equals minus I, or I minus, that is going to make a difference. But in this case, where you're doing just the action itself of like just increment it or just decrement it, then that's not going to make a difference if you do it before, if you do it after. Okay, so now we have our loop set up. This loop for now is just giving us a number. It's going to give us a number 4 and then a number 3 and a 2 and a 1 and a 0. So that's very useful because right now, for example, with our string that we have, str, I know that if I say number 0, I'll have the first letter of the string. Number 1, I'll have the second letter of the string, etc., etc. If I want to get the last letter of the string, which I don't even know how long the string is, I might say str.length. This will give you the last character of the string, except it's actually going to give you 1 past the last one of the string. You're going to have to do -1 to this. So how can I get my counter from the for loop to help me out here, to get me the letter of the string, which is at the end? What should I put in here to give me that particular number, the number of whatever you need to be at the end of the string? What do I put inside here? Correct, Menachem Mendel. Just I will, in fact, do it. Right? So in the first round, I is going to be 4. In the second round, I is going to be 3 and 2 and 1 and 0. Each time it's going to be, like we tested over here, it's going to give you another part of the string. You know, if you do a string with square brackets 0, that gives you the first character. You know, 50 will give you the 50th character, etc., etc. So we're going to use that trick over here to say whatever was in the string that the guy gave to us, like this hello string over here, get me that number variable. That get me that number of the character inside of that string. So in the first round, if I is equals to 4, which is the length of the string -1, what's the number 4th character of the word hello? Let's go test that out just to get familiar with it. Number 0 is the H, etc., etc., etc. Number 3 is the second L. Number 4 is the O. Actually, that is the last character of the string. So we made a loop that starts off by giving us the last character of the string. And ideally, if this works correctly, and if my phone doesn't interrupt, sorry about that, it's going to keep giving us the next letter before, the next letter before, the next letter before. And now, what good is this to us? What we want to do is we want to reverse a string. So I want to somehow take this letter that I got from the end of the string, and I want to put it into, I guess, a new string, where in this new string, I'm going to start gathering, I'm going to start collecting together every letter that I get from the end, from the back end, going backwards of this other string that was passed into us. Let's create a new variable here, var reversed equals empty string, starts off by being empty. And now I want to put inside of it whatever I got from the end of the string. So how do I add this character, which is one single character that came out of the string, as we saw over here? I got one character out of the string. How do I add it in to my reversed string? Any suggestions? So someone is asking if push can do it. Push is a function on arrays. And yes, arrays is probably the more straightforward, or I guess the more knowledgeable way of doing this. Once you're already familiar with JavaScript and you know about arrays and you know how arrays can help you in this situation, you would do the array way, as you guys can easily find on Google. But I'm trying to do this exercise actually from the string perspective so that you guys see the nitty-gritty of how you think as a computer. You have a string of text, you want to reverse it. Go to the last character, put it together, go to the next last character, put it together, etc., etc. And there's how you manually reverse a string. And this teaches you a lot of skills in programming when you go through this step by step. You really connect with the concepts. So string does not have a push function, unfortunately. You can't do like some sort of string, push another character into there, and you're hoping that in the end, that's going to result in whatever you had here, and then also another F at the end. String does not have a push character. So what other suggestions do we have? Reversed with parentheses passing in stir I. So I think you're onto something over here. The only thing is you're using reversed as if it's a function. Anything that has parentheses like that, that means you're calling a function. Like alert, whenever we did alert, it had parentheses. When we created a function over here, reverse string, it has parentheses. Variables don't have parentheses. Variables are just var, the name of your variable equals 6, right? And then you can do x times 78, and you can do x minus equals 50, etc., etc. This is how you use, you don't have to say, oh, my variable name with parentheses, like you're calling a function. That actually doesn't make sense. A variable is a variable, a function is a function. You don't have to use parentheses with a variable, but you are onto something. We want to do something with this reversed variable, and we want to be able to add into here the O that we got at the end of the string the first time around, the L that we get the next time around, another L. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to combine strings. Does anyone remember how we used to combine strings? Like when we did alert, some sort of message, like hello, and then we wanted to put something else next to that hello. We used the plus character. Okay, and then we could either put another string and it'll scrunch them both together, or we can put a number and it'll scrunch that together, etc., etc. We can use the plus symbol to combine together different strings. So we have the string reversed, and we want to combine into it the character that we got out of the end of the string. So let's do reversed equals whatever reversed was before, which so far was just an empty string, plus whatever we just got out of the string. Now let's step through this with some debugging and get down and dirty and see how this works. I'm going to copy all of this code into the JavaScript console here. Okay, we have our code here. I'm going to make it a little smaller. Hopefully you guys can see clearly enough. Let me pop it out. Okay, this is hopefully legible enough. If you do string plus string and you put that into alert, alert should actually be able to show you that. It should be combining both of those strings. Okay, so let's look at our code over here and see what's going on. We created the function reverse string. We created a new variable reversed inside of that function. And we're trying to loop through this string one by one. And we're doing reversed equals reversed plus whatever came out of the end of that string. So let me debug this, and let's see what happens. Debugger. All right. I'm going to do this so far with only one string so that we don't keep running through it over and over again. We're going to start with this for now. Okay. All right, so here we are in the JavaScript debugger. He stopped over here for us so we can catch our breath and see what's going on. So we used to be here in the code on line 16. But then from here, we said, hey, jump into that other list of instructions to do. So we came inside here. Actually, let's demonstrate that, actually. I want this to be demonstrable so that we can see that that's actually the case. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breakpoint right at the beginning of all the code. Okay, here we go. Debugger right at the beginning. And let me take out this one. Okay, so now the JavaScript program is starting to run its code from the beginning. It's going down the list of instructions one line by one line, one at a time. First line, second line. Oh, in the third line, we just created a function. No reason to stop there. He skipped over the entire thing, and he's not running it now. That's the idea of a function. A function is a package of instructions that you're going to do later at a later time. Now we're just continuing running our stuff. So he went straight to line 16. In line 16, we say, your command is now to go into reverse string function, go in there and execute all of those instructions. So you guys saw it yourselves. The computer starts at the top, skips over the whole function, and first does what's after the function. And then now we tell it, now I want you to actually go into that function. So it's going to jump in there. I'm going to use the step into next function call button here by the debugger. And here we are inside of our function. So you guys saw it yourselves. The computer, we thought before, the computer executes all instructions sequentially, one after another. But now we saw it actually does the ground floor of all the code first. And if you tell it to go jump somewhere else, it's going to go jump back there. So we went from line 1 to line 16, back to line 7, because that's where we're inside the belly of this function that we created, which starts with the opening brace and ends with the closing one. Now, we're creating a variable called reversed, and now we're jumping into our loop. What are we doing with our loop? I'm creating a variable I. I'm saying, variable I, you start off by having whatever string length is, which in this case is 5, minus 1. That's one way to do it. You can also
Yisrael, we can't see the debugger.
Oh, is that so? I'm sorry about that. Just a minute. Hang on. Let me stop the share for a second and let's start again. Thanks for telling me. At least hopefully it wasn't as bad as the other time. Here we go. Share screen.
They're asking if you could please start over. I'm not sure from which point though.
Okay, yeah. We just started, so let me start again. Here we go. Just gonna skip all the way to the end. Okay, let's do this again. Here's all the code that we typed. We created a function that's supposed to reverse a string. And over here, we're going to call that function and see what happens in it. And now I'm actually going to press enter and start running it. And we paused JavaScript and said, whoa, hold on there. Stop from the beginning. I want to see what happens at every step of the way. So we're starting from line 1, stepping over it. You guys can see it now, yeah? They can see it? Everyone sees it now? See the debugger? Okay. closed. My chat got closed over here. Okay, here we go. All right. So we start at line number 1. And you would think a program runs sequentially, line by line, one after another, right? So we're probably going to do line 3, line 7, line 9. But no, look, we skipped straight to line 16. Why? Because on the ground floor of our code, so to speak, in the main area where we wrote our codes, all we did was create a function. That's like a program inside of your program. That's like another file of instructions for the computer to do at a later time. That's the function that we created. Now on line 16, we're actually telling JavaScript, now go into that function that I created before and actually do that code. So if I step into that using the step into button, we usually did step over function or the play button. Now I'm going to use the step into button, which says, go inside this function and let's go through it step by step. And here we are back at line 7. Because we created a function over there, which we stepped into now, starting at this opening brace and going straight to the closing brace. So now we're going to execute all of this code over here, line by line, one by one, as if that's now the program that we're supposed to execute. And once we're done, we're going to resume back to where we came from. So now we're doing this little mini program inside of a program. We're supposed to try to reverse the string. And we passed into this function the string hello. That's what we're going to be working with over here, trying to reverse the string. And at this point, I'll be taking a short break, and Label, if you can take over, maybe cover some other concepts or jump into this further if you'd like.
Sure.
And I'll be back shortly.
Yeah, I'll do some other debugging. I'll, some other JavaScript debugging to show a little bit more. Do you mind allowing me to have the screen, please?
Yeah, let me do that just a second. There we go. Okay.
And
okay, there you go.
Perfect. All right. So first of all, feel free to ask whatever you have here. I'll leave the rest of reverse string freeze for all to continue. But while we're on this debugging concept, I'll show you something you can actually play with in Top Baby Deal, because that's kind of the framework we've been using a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. This will. All right, let's share Chrome. All right, and just maybe this will be interesting, and I'll hopefully show you on a real world example as well. So I'll close this out and I'll show you how to get there from scratch. Let's see. Q&A, and let's open the chat so I can see what's going on. All right, perfect. So Avremel, you answered Menachem Mendel Engel's question. Thank you. All right, so here we are. We're on Top Baby Deal. And now you can actually see there is some logic that can be done here. So I'm going to, first of all, well, before I log in, let's do this. There's some things you can upvote and downvote. Now, granted, upvote and downvote's not working perfectly right now. You can upvote and downvote, but refreshing the score, it's all 100% now, even if I downvote something, even if I downvote this. Okay, so first things first, we have a sign up. So let's see what happens here. I'm going to inspect, and I'm going to go to sources, and I'm going to find the JavaScript. And the way I did that was to go to static, JS, and this is just the JavaScript of the Top Baby Deal site. It's actually very minimal. There's not much going on here. But let's see what happens if I click upvote on something. I clicked upvote, and hopefully you can see this. So dot upvote, you'll see, if we go here, you'll see that this has a class of upvote. It should, somewhere here that should have upvote. If you click on something with here, yeah, you see it has a class of upvote. So then we went back to sources. So I added some jQuery that says when you click on upvote, it should do this function. Now, what is this function? This function sends a request to my server that says, by the way, somebody just upvoted this. Now, right away, it says, hey, I want to see, is this user authenticated? is there a logged in user on Top Baby Deal that is actually allowed to vote here? So it turns out if I hover over is authenticated, it's false because the user is not authenticated. And then what happens is basically, if we continue here, let me move away the chat. If we just continue, it just returns out of the function and does nothing. And then it triggers the modal, and now I could log in. So hopefully you can actually see now that we're not just debugging with, you know, reversing a string, but this actually has real world uses. So I'm just going to sign in with Google so that you can then see some more logic and make it interesting. I think I have an account with this thing. Sharing for 1 second. And all right, let's go ahead and share again. So, all right, I logged in. Now you can see I'm logged in. Now I again have my breakpoint there. And tell me if you have any questions about what I'm doing, please. I have my breakpoint here, and I'm going to click upvote. Let's say I'm going to go to the Huggies diapers. Oh, so far that's just diapers. I want to get away from diapers. And let's say I want to upvote this little Paw Patrol ride-on. So I'll upvote it, and now is authenticated is true because the server set this variable to be true. Can't see big enough, sorry, all right. Hopefully you can see a little bit better now. So now you can see is authenticated is true, and so now we'll continue. So now what do we have to do in order to actually upvote this item? So first things first, this deal will have some kind of ID. It'll have some kind of ID that's stored in the back end of the system that, you know, is a full record with this ID, has this link and this image, etc. Let me see. How do you set a red dot? You just literally click right here. You just click next to it and you can set the red dot for the debugger. So now I need to get the ID, and how do I actually make sure that there's an ID set here? So let's go here. So if we go and we go to each link, you'll notice in a deal link container, you'll see somewhere here, I set an ID, here, ID. For this table row, you see there's an ID 3871, which means it's deal number 3871, which means basically since I started creating this Top Baby Deal thing, I've had 3,871 deal links on the site. Anyway, back to here. So now what do I need to do? I need to be able to get the link ID so that I can go tell my server 3,871. So I can go ahead and tell my server that I want to upvote link ID 3871. Okay, so now every JavaScript, anytime something happens like a click in JavaScript, it's called an event. And you have an event.target, which is the element that triggered that event. I may be going a little bit ahead and more advanced in some of this, but I really want to show you a real world example of some debugging. And basically what I'm doing is I clicked on one specific element. I clicked on this hand. This hand is what I clicked on. So I need to go up a few elements, right? Because HTML is nested. There's elements inside of elements. So I have to go up a few elements. I have to go up to the target node, and I have to basically go up all the way till here. Whoops, I did not want to do that. I want to go up all the way until here, until I get the parent node, and the parent node is a TR, is a table row, and I can finally get the ID of that TR, and it's 3871, I get the ID. Okay, then what do I do? Now, before I actually do that, I want to check, did I already vote? So what happens is when I vote, I add a class called voted to that item. So if you will have already voted, it will actually unvote it. You see there? It will call the unvote API, engine/unvote. Again, hopefully this is interesting to you. But in this case, I have not yet voted on this, so it's going to skip over that, and it's just going to upvote it. And when it's done voting, it's going to up, so it actually voted, and now what's it going to do? It's going to show, and cha-ching, boom, voted modal.show. So you literally see each piece of the JavaScript running, and you can actually see now how each element of how each piece of JavaScript can actually make your site dynamic. So after I clicked upvote and it sent the request to my server to /upvote to create this upvote in the system, on the response of that, it then removes the class downvoted, it adds the class voted, and it shows the modal thank you for voting. Now, if we do that one more time, okay, let's close that. Let me just see if there's anything I'm missing here. No, nothing in the chat. And anything in the Q&A. What is a modal? A modal is just a pop-up thing. Modal is the pop-up. All right. Now let's click one more time so you can see the other piece. Again, tell me if this is interesting or not interesting. I'm just, again, trying to show you a real world example. So first I'll show you what happens when I unclick, right? So I actually decided I don't really like this item. I want to unvote it. Boom, so now I clicked it. I clicked on the upvote thing, on the upvote button. But in this case, okay, and I get the link ID, but in this case, it already has voted. You see, it's already green. I already voted in this. So now it's true. So now instead what's going to happen is it's going to say unvote. It's calling the API called unvote. And it was data okay. It unvoted it. And now, boom, we remove. Now it's gone. Now it's no longer green. I can also downvote. You can see I can do the same thing with downvote. If you click on downvote, it does the same thing. It'll hit downvote, etc., etc. Anyway, so hopefully that's interesting to you. Let's see what's in the chat. Very interesting. All right, great. Does it stop before code on the other line with the red? Does it stop before code on the line with the red dot is executed, or after the code on that line is executed? It stops before that line is executed. So yeah, if I put a red dot here, it's going to stop before this post is executed. All right, let's see if there's something else interesting we could do here. Oh, here's one more API I could show you. And that is that when people click on links, I want to know which links are being clicked on. I want to see which links are being clicked on a lot. So when somebody clicks on a link, I have this API again that will get hit. So let's, for example, click on this link and boom. So we got on .dealLink, which this is .dealLink. You see it has the class of .dealLink if you look right there. It's an A tag with a .dealLink class. So we're saying jQuery when somebody, by the way, this is all jQuery, you'll notice. So you'll see when somebody clicks on .dealLink and we can go, it will track this click. And actually, I don't have it open right now. Maybe the next class, I know we're not going to get really to the database side of things, but it could be interesting for you to see. I can open up the database and show you that when somebody clicks the deal link and it goes to engine/click track, we'll actually add a record that somebody clicked on this. Which is, by the way, standard in all sorts of everything, in Facebook and Google. Everything you do is tracked. You'll inspect here. I'll show you actually one more interesting thing. You want to see one more interesting thing as you scroll back yet? All right, one more interesting thing with JavaScript.
Yeah, I'm actually here, but go ahead. Finish your thoughts.
Oh, okay. Since we're showing how you can do things with JavaScript, and actually I'm showing you some real world examples of things that happen. So there's a method called jQuery.ajax. What does jQuery.ajax do? It makes a request for some kind of data, right? We talked a little bit about the concept of request and response. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller so that I can see what I'm doing here. But let's clear the log. And so there's one of the first use cases of this whole Ajax concept, which was to make requests in the browser, was this right here. What is this that I'm going to show you? I'm going to show you how every keystroke you make in a Google search we'll create another AJAX request. And what's the purpose of that? To find all of the autocomplete data. So say I want to find something about JavaScript. So I start typing JavaScript, and you'll see it hits an API called search. And what does it respond with? It responds with all of the possibilities. So first of all, it responds with all of the possibilities of what I have saved in my browser, JavaScript video recording SDK I was looking up. And then it starts to have all these other things. John Bolton, Joe Biden, right? Anything with a Joe. And now I go Java, and you'll see there's a new request literally with each, and I have Java. And for Java, you have all of these various things that come up. JavaScript, Java download. How does it get this autocomplete data? It gets it through an actual request. So this is just another interesting way you can actually see. If you go to the network tab, you can see all the requests that your browser is doing. Anyway, I was just mentioning that because I showed you how I actually track clicks on Top Baby Deal through JavaScript and jQuery. So you can, the more you know, the more you can just kind of play around and tinker around and see interesting things that websites are doing to track you and be evil. Anyway, all right, back to you, Yisrael.
Yeah, very cool. Shkoyach for that. Yeah, it's very very cool stuff that we can. We're gonna probably overview a little bit about it either in the last two classes or the last class. But I'm gonna try to give a bit of an overview about basically what we missed or what we didn't have time to cover, including like what you just showed now, that how to send HTTP requests through AJAX. With every different action that people do, and in the web page, you can trigger that it should do another request to the server, get me this data, get me that data, like you guys just saw in Google. Even by typing a letter, 2 letters, 3 letters each time, Google is making the browser ask the Google servers, hey, give me some suggestions for these letters, give me some suggestions for these letters. And it always comes back with some new suggestions of, you know, whatever starts with a J, with a JA, with a JAV, etc., as we're going to see. So yeah, cool stuff, and hopefully getting back to that at some point. All right, so now back to this task at hand, which we were doing to try to reverse a string by going, basically, we're really becoming this is where we're really starting to become a programming technician. We're like getting into the nuts and bolts of the piece by piece of how you reverse a string. And if you think about it, at the end of the day, it's pretty logical. It's like you have a stack of cards, HELLO, and you manually want to just put them the other way. So you put the O, and then you put the L, and then the L, and the E, and the H, and you have it reversed. So we're kind of doing that same kind of idea right here in JavaScript by taking the string that came into our program here, HELLO, and trying to put it into a new box, a new variable, that's going to contain the results of what we're working with over here. So ideally, if everything goes well, we're going to start looping through over here, starting by a certain number and stopping at a certain number. What we're trying to do at this point is we're trying to say start at however long this string is, and count down one by one until we're at 0 or at 1, depending on how you want to do the program. So we first create a variable I, and we assign to I to have the number 4. Why the number 4? Because we want to start counting from 4 and go all the way down to 0, 0 included. That's how long the string is. It has elements 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to start at 4, since we want to go in reverse from the last letter and going back the other way. Now we're going to ask the question, are we done with looping over and over again? Are we finished? Is I less than 0? Because once we went through 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 and 0, this program is technically going to still continue going. It's going to go minus, minus. What do you get when you minus, minus 0? You get -1. It's going to keep looping. If it could, it would keep on looping and go -2, -3, -4, etc., forever. So we have to stop him at some point and say, hey, if you reach down to 0, which is the first character of our string, that's the maximum we want to reach, then that's your condition for when you know you should stop looping and don't go over and over it again. So is I less than 0? If we went into the area of -1, cut it, we're done. But at this point, I is 4, and 4 is not less than 0. Oh, hang on. So we have a problem. This is actually going to stop right away. Yeah, it didn't even execute our loop. Why? Because it immediately wasn't true that 4 is less than 0. We're thinking of this wrong. Okay. What we really need to do is, any suggestions? You guys fill me in over here. What condition do I need to say other than I being less than 0? That's not what we're looking for. We need something to be true when it's 4. It should be true when it's 3. It should be true when it's 2. True when it's 1. True when it's 0. And the only first time it becomes false is if when it goes less than 0. That's when it should be false. So let me open up my chat over here, which closed again, and see what do you guys suggest I should do. Where did the chat go? Why don't I see it? Oh, here we go. Okay, you guys suggest I should do what if I is more than 0, or I more than equals to 0. Okay, so let me try. Let's go back to our code here. And let's go back to editing it. So as long as, let's think about this. If I do I is more than 0. So is 4 more than 0? Yes. Okay, that's good. Is 3 more than 0? Yes. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Is 0 more than 0? No. So as soon as we're holding by element 0, we're going to not process it. So we're going to get the O, the L, the L, the E, but not the H. Because if I is more than 0 is 0, 0 is not more than 0, it's going to be false. We're going to skip the last one, which is why the other guy's suggestion, more than or equals to 0, is correct. As long as it's 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0 inclusive, it's going to continue processing. As soon as it's less than 0, that's actually when it's going to stop. Okay, and now let's execute this code, creating our function, calling our function, and now, oops, I jumped over it instead of going inside of it. Here we go. Let's try that again. Execute the code. Okay. Step over, step into. Okay, now we're inside the function. We created an empty variable, and now we're starting to loop. And here we are, first round inside of our loop. Inside of the loop, I is 4. And that's useful because that lets us get the last character of the string. The string has character 0, which is H, has character 1, which is E, and 2, which is L, and then O. This right here gives us, if I mouse over it, I can see the value. That's what's so cool about the debugger. This will give us the O. And now I'm telling the JavaScript language, hey, take whatever reversed was up until now, and add to it, squish it together with the last character of the string that was passed into our function. The results of that is, well, in this case, this variable had nothing in it. It had empty string. So I'm going to take empty string on the one hand, and I'm going to take the letter O on the other hand, and I'm going to plus them together. What's the results of that? Let's mouse over it and see. Empty string plus the letter O equals the letter O, because we had a letter O and we put empty next to it, so we end up having just the letter O. Take that letter O and make that the new contents of our box, of our variable reversed. Until now, reversed was empty. Now it's going to have the result of squishing itself together with another letter. Let's step over that and see. Now the variable reversed has the letter O. Okay, now we're ready for iteration number 2. I is going to be minus minus now. So beforehand it was 4. After executing that, it is going to be 3. Is 3 more than or equals to 0? Yes, yes it is. Okay, then let's step in here and see. What are we going to get now from out of the string? Letter number 3 is the L. That's second to the last L. What if I squish that together with the O that we had from before? You take whatever it had before, which happens to be an O in this case. Squish it together with whatever comes out of letter number 3, the fourth letter of the string. And together you get O together with the letter that just came out of the string, L, O, L. Take that result and put it into the variable that we had until now. So now reversed first had nothing, then it had O, then it had L. And as we keep going, we keep taking the last character or the next in line character from that string, str, and we keep squishing it together with whatever we collected until now in this variable reversed. And the end result seems to be that the variable reversed is in fact starting to fill up with the reversed, the opposite of the word that we passed into it. And here we go over it again and again. Now it already has O-L-L-E. And let's watch the final round to see if it executes as we expect. And here we go. I is now equals to 0. That means we went all the way up to the first character of the string. Well, really, the I variable doesn't know anything about the string. The I variable is just a number. It's a number that started at 4 and is counting down to 0. We're using this I variable conveniently to get something out of the string by using the square brackets notation. Hey, string, let me get your character number something, whatever it is that the number I is giving us. That's a useful way how to think of going one by one through a string using its index position in the characters that are inside of that string. So finally, we have already the letters O-L-L-E, and we take out the first character of the string, which is an H. We squish them together, and we put the results of that into the reversed variable. We minus the I. So the I used to be 0. Now it's going to be -1, because 0 minus 1 is -1. And now we're evaluating this calculation. Is I more than or equals to 0? At this point, it isn't. -1 is not more than 0, and it's not equals to 0. So this is not going to be false. Aha, false in a loop means it's time to stop doing the loop. So we finish doing the loop, and we have a variable that has the results of reversing our string letter by letter, one by one, and putting it into a variable. And finally, in the end, we return str, which is our original string, which means that after all that work, the results of calling the function is actually hello. The first string that we started off with is exactly the string that we ended off with. Can anyone suggest to me, please, what is the solution to make it so that after doing my whole job in this function, I should end up with the results of all of our hard work and not just give us back the same thing that we started off with? Yes, correct. Very good. Return reversed. Okay. So that's the variable that we want to return, which will give us the results of reversing something. And I'm going to take out the debugger, and I'm just going to see in the console, has it successfully reversed our string? And over here, we can see very proudly, indeed it has. But hey, I don't believe this. Maybe we coded this function in some very, very specific way, which only works for the word hello. Who knows if it's going to work with other stuff? You'll never know until you try. So let's try it. I'm going to call the reverse string, and I'm going to pass into it, I don't believe this works. And let's see if all the magic that we did until now is going to take hold with whatever we throw at it. And here you go. Scrows I. It worked very well, actually. It took all the text that we threw at it, and it reversed it in place. And this will work with anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0 is reversed into 0, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Why? Because that's what we told the program to do. We told him, take this string that I'm giving you, loop through it by counting down from however long the string is. So if the string was hello, then it was a length of 5. If the string was I don't believe this works, then that's going to be like, I don't know, 20 characters, 30 characters, whatever it is. However long it is, start from that last position and start counting back one by one by one. And through that, we're able to get each letter and take that letter one by one in order, put it into a new variable where it's going to stay until we have the entire picture put together. And then that's what we return out of the function. So this is one way how we can very manually and very in detailed with nuts and bolts go step by step of reversing a string. And I would highly recommend you guys exercise something like this yourself. This is one, I guess, we walked through ourselves and we kind of saw and learned the solution as we went. But if you guys go over here and go through converting Celsius to Fahrenheit, or factorialize a number, or find the longest word in a string, return the largest number in an array, right? Let's say we have an array. Where's my playing around window over here? Okay, let's say we have, let me just open up another console over here. Oh, here it is. Let's say we have an array that has in it 10, 20, 200, 12, 0, negative 400, okay? Here's an array that has multiple variables inside of it. First one, second one, third one, etc. Let's say you need to calculate what is the largest number in here. And you yourself as a human can look at this and say, oh, well, duh, I could see it's 200. Yeah, but how's the computer supposed to know that? When the computer looks at all these numbers, and today it could be these numbers, and tomorrow it could be a totally different set of numbers when someone else is using the program. They had 300, and then 6, and then 13, and then 88, and then they had like negative 70, and then they had 600, right? Now what are you going to do to figure out what's the biggest number there? Oh, well, I can see clearly it's 600. Yeah, you can see it when you read it now. But every time it's going to be a different set of numbers. Someone else is going to use the program and the array is going to have a different set of numbers. What is the logical programmatic way how to figure out what is the biggest number here? And there's a way how to do this. And the most nuts and boltsy way how to do it is probably by looping through the array step by step and trying to figure out, is this variable greater than, by using the angle bracket operator, is it greater than the value that we had before? And you have to keep that value in a variable so you can keep testing. Oh, this is the largest variable. Oh, this one is larger, so then this one replaces the previous one. Oh, this one is smaller, so we're going to skip this one to the next round. And by looping through the array one by one by one and calculating which one is greater than, which one is larger, that's one way how you can calculate and figure out finding the largest number in an array. How to find which string has the largest length, similar idea. How to repeat a string. Let's say I give you the string hello, and I want you to turn that into hello, hello, hello. How so? Because I gave you the word hello, and I give you the number 3. And now you figure out how to take that string and make it happen 3 times. What if I give you the word hello, and I pass you the number 10? So I want to get back the word hello 10 times. Is your code going to do that correctly? Is it going to loop? Is it going to multiply? How is it going to figure out how to take these parameters into the function, like take a string and take a number, and you do some magic in your function that's going to have this result of repeating a string a certain amount of times. Let's see over here. I'm not sure what all the rest of these mean, but they sound pretty interesting. And they all are these very good exercises that really train you into understanding how programming works. Let me have a quick look if anyone has a specific question about this. Otherwise, maybe we'll jump into one more example project like that, a mini problem that we should solve, a mini challenge that we should code. And maybe we'll end off with that for today. How do you open up a blank console screen? Good question. First of all, you need to have the developer tools. Developer tools is by right-clicking and selecting Inspect. Or you can do on your keyboard Control-Shift-I. If you're on a Mac, I'm not sure what the combination is. It's something like maybe a Command-Shift-I or something like that. I'm not sure how it works on Mac. You can also just right-click and do Inspect. Or you can press F12 if you're on PC. I'm not sure if Mac also has the F keys. I'm not sure if it does. If it does, then you can just press F12, and that brings up this whole, programming stuff over here, which I zoomed into, so it's very, very large, but usually it's going to look more or less something like this. And in here, you have a bunch of tabs. The first tab that we learned about when we first learned about, HTML and CSS and all that, that's the tab that has everything that's in your web page, the HTML. On the side, you can also see the CSS. But your second tab is going to be the console, at least at the time of this recording. The second tab is the console. Over there, you can play around and test with pieces of code. You can say something like var x equals 10. Now tell me, how much is 10? I'm sorry, how much is x? Oh, x is 10. Wonderful. How much is x times 80? Oh, it's 800. How much is x divided by 400? Etc., etc. You can play around over here. You can do alerts. You can make functions. You can make loops. You can test around and play around with different things. That's inside of your F12 developer tools, going to the second tab, which is the console. Next, which section of Free Code Camp are we? I opened up Free Code Camp. I went into the JavaScript algorithms and data structures certification. Again, these are very like fancy and scary sounding names, but it's really just, this is the section about JavaScript. You have one section in here that has basic JavaScript. Here, let me just demonstrate just to be clear. I'm going to freecodecamp.org. I'm scrolling down, and down here you have JavaScript algorithms and data structures. I'm scrolling down again, and I have all of the different sections inside of JavaScript. I already went over basic JavaScript and ES6. I'm going to go straight to basic algorithm scripting. That's the section where I was in right now. Okay, so without further ado, let's do another quick exercise just to get more familiar with JavaScript, and hopefully with that, maybe we'll have enough to work with so that by next class, we'll do a little bit more of jQuery, and then from there we'll step into a little bit of advanced stuff before we're finished with the course. So I'm going to do title case a sentence. Why not? That sounds cool. The idea is you should make a magic function which does some magic stuff inside of it, which at the end of the day, however you do it and whatever you do, at the end of the day, if I pass in a string into this function, I want you to return to me the results of this function should come out with every word in the string. I think that he wants the first letter of each word should be uppercase. Let's confirm that that's what the task is. Return provided string with the first letter of each word capitalized. Yes. Make sure the rest of the word is in lowercase. For purposes of this exercise, you should also capitalize connecting words like the and of. Eventually, you know, in actual proper English, you might have to have some fancy logic that says that if it's a connecting word, then you don't have to capitalize it. But now, to keep things simple, we're just going to capitalize every single word of the phrase that you pass into this function. Okay, so how do we make this function? Title case should be a magic function, which at the end of the day gives us back this phrase, I'm a little teapot, with an uppercase A, and an uppercase L, and an uppercase T, and an uppercase P. And how are we going to do that with coding? Let's see over here. Yes, to the one who asked about Googling, I'm glad you did Google to find the answer, because that's a good way to get started. Nowadays, you're going to find a lot of your answers about how to do stuff by just cheating, which is by Googling and finding someone else that wrote the code and copying what they do. And at first, you might just copy it blindly and not even understand what you're doing, but as time goes along, you'll spend a minute or two trying to read it, trying to understand it. Sometime you're going to copy something out of Google and you're going to see, hey, this doesn't work. This is not what I need. And you're going to try to debug it and step into it and see, why is it doing this? And what's the purpose of that? And why is it doing this thing and creating this variable and that and the other? That's going to be helpful to figure things out. So it's great to be Googling things. Okay, so someone copy and pasted something that they found out of Google. And that's not even a problem for me, because it's using some very cool fancy stuff. It's using regular expressions, and it's using a two uppercase function. Actually, we might actually use that one. So that'll be an interesting function to use. But the one you're using there is basically the ultimate fancy way how to do it, which is once you're familiar with all the functions, once you're familiar with arrays, once you're familiar with strings and you're familiar with regular expressions, then you're going to be doing things this way. Or if you just want to copy paste it out of Google, you'll do that. But let's do it a little bit the nitty-gritty way and learn more about programming. Let's loop through this step by step and figure out, how do we do this manually? How do we go step by step and turn this string from all lowercase or almost all lowercase to be capitalize the first letter? So one way how to do this, which is as we demonstrated in the previous example, is to think about this like, how would you do this if this was a stack of cards? Okay, so if you had a stack of cards, one which had an I on it, and one which had an apostrophe, and one had an M, and one had a blank space, and one had an A, etc., etc., etc. and you're working through a pile of cards, and you're a human, right? You're not a computer. You're just thinking of it like a human. What would you do? What would be your actual thought process, step by step, to figure this out? So let's think about this a minute. I have this string of text over here. I have a stack of cards. What I want to do is I want to go through each card one by one, step by step. I have an uppercase I. I have an apostrophe. I have an M. I have a space. Ooh, space is interesting. Okay. Each time I go through a card, I want to ask myself a question. Is this a card that has some text in it? Or is this a card that is an empty space? If it's a regular letter, then that belongs to the word. So just continue going through it. If, however, the card is an empty space, that denotes that we're at the end of a word. And the next letter for the next word, we need to turn into uppercase. So anytime we encounter on our stack of cards over here of text, anytime we encounter one that is an empty space, that should have something interesting about it. That should have a special handling for that situation. Ooh, you got a card that has an empty space, something special is going to happen here because we had an empty space. So we want to go through each and every one of these letters one by one, and we want to note where is there a space, a white space. And once we reach a white space, we want to make sure that the next letter gets uppercased. That's what we want to do. So how would we do this logical human way of thinking and programming? Well, we described going through the cards one by one and asking a question about a specific card, whether it has text or whether it's empty. And we learned a few interesting ways how you do that in programming. Going through something one after another is done by doing a loop. And then inside of our loop, asking a question about each individual item that we're going through. What do you guys suggest we use for asking a question? Is this this or is this that? How do we do that in programming? And correct. The answer is by using an if statement. If one thing is true, then do one thing. Else, otherwise, if it's not true, then do another thing. And repeat this over and over and over again. So I didn't even finish writing my whole code over here. You see I have the red squiggly lines under this code because this is, this is syntax error over here. You guys can see over here there's an error happening. I didn't even finish writing the code, but I started writing up my general structure of how my code is going to look. I wrote up some quick half-baked code, and then I'm going to go into more details to fill it in. But right now, generally, this is like a human going through a stack of cards, because I'm going to go through it over and over and over and over again, meaning I'm going to have a set of steps that I'm going to keep repeating one after another after another. I'm going to take the next card out of the pile and put it aside. I'm going to take the next card out of the pile and put it aside. This repetitive action means you want to loop. You want to do something over and over again. And for each and every one, whatever goes on inside here, I want to ask a question. If one thing is true, then do one thing. If something else is true, then do another thing. That's this if statement over here. So let's start looping through our string. We were given a variable. The variable is str, and it can have inside of it who knows what. Something like I'm a little teapot, or anything else, whatever it is that the string could be. Could be anything, right? So we have a string that has this value inside of it, or any other value, and we want to loop through it one by one. So we already learned that if we do str0, we get the first character, str1, we get the second character, etc., etc. So let's go through the string one by making a variable that helps us go to stri, and I could be a variable that has anything. It could be number 0, it could be number 1, it could be number 10. Whatever it is that we make it to be, it's going to give us that letter of the string. So we're going to set up our loop again. Please make me a variable that's going to keep track of where I'm holding. I'm going to start off by, where do I start off by, if you guys remember? Any suggestions? How do I know where to start off by? This time, we're not trying to do the reverse thing, which is that I want to start from the end of the string and go from there backwards, but rather I want to start by the beginning. What's the beginning of a string? 0. Very good. Var I equals 0. Start at 0, which is going to give us the first character of the string. If I say stri, that gives us number 0 of the string, starting at the beginning. Okay, now what's a good condition to know that I'm done? If I counts up from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 10, how do I know I'm done? That I don't want to be continuing anymore because the string does not have any more letters to it. How do I find out if I is already too much, if I is already too high? Very good, string length. It's not exactly spelled, but you're on the right track. I needs to have some sort of comparison with str dot length. So remember, the length is going to be the human number of how many letters it has in it. And we want to have the computer number, not the human number. We want to have the computer number that starts at 0 and goes up to 1 less than the length of the string. So keep that in mind. And now what do I do to know whether I has reached this threshold or not? Should I use equals equals? If I is equals equals to the length, that's when I want to stop. Is this a good comparison? How about we try it and see? Let's see how we can go with this. Someone else's suggestion is suggesting I should be less than the length. So as long as it's less than the length, we should continue rolling with it. As soon as he reaches the length, or if he reaches more than the length, that's when we should stop. So if I is 0, it's going to keep going. If I is 1, if I is 2, if I is 3, as long as it's less than the length of the string, we're going to keep rolling with it. And finally, in the end, I want to count up my variable, I++, or we can just as much do plus plus I in this case. All right, so now we have I. I is convenient because now I can go into the string and say, give me letter number I, and it's going to give me whatever letter it is. It's going to be the uppercase I the first time around, then it's going to be an apostrophe, then it's going to be an M, etc., etc. This is going to give me that one letter out of the string. Now, plus plus I means please increment this variable. The variable I at begin with is equals to 0, but we don't want it to stay at 0. We want it to count up, go to 1, now go to 2, now go to 3. So we learned a few ways how we can do that. And in truth, we can do that right over here. We can say, I want you to be equals to whatever you were before plus 1. Let's move this away so we have a bit more space here. Okay, you should be equals to I plus 1. Whatever I was before, maybe I was 0 before. So 0 plus 1 is 1. You should now be equals to 1. Next time around, I is going to be I plus 1. That's going to be 2, because 1 plus 1 is 2. Next time, it's going to be 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5, etc. This is one way how to do a trick which will increment, which will keep bringing up your variable by 1. You can do it with another way, which is a convenient little thing over here, plus equals. I plus equals 1. This will always add 1 to whatever is inside of your variable. Or the shortest hand way how to do this trick is by using plus plus. I plus plus, or by using plus plus I. This will basically say, count up this variable. Open up the box that was this variable I. Take whatever number is inside of it. Maybe it's 0. Maybe it's 1. Maybe it's 10. Whatever number is inside of it, add 1 to it. So 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 10 plus 1 is 11. Whatever number ends up being, put that back into the box. Just add 1 to whatever number was in the box. That's what plus plus does. Okay, so we're looping through this number of I, starting at 0, counting up number by number. So now, if I say, let's say, the current letter, I'm creating a new variable just to make it convenient to hold inside of a convenient little box over here. Create a variable and put inside of it stri. So take that letter wherever we're up to, if it's the uppercase I, if it's the apostrophe, if it's the M, if it's a white space, take that letter and put it into this variable called the current letter. So now this current letter is going to be a box that every time around, inside of it, it's going to magically have a different thing. The first time it's going to have the first letter. The second time it's going to have the second letter, etc., etc. So right now, when we started our loop, the first time around, it has the first letter, which in our case is the uppercase I. And now we have some important questions to ask. Let's think back to the human that was going through a pile of cards, one after another. With each card, you do this instinctively, so you don't even think, but your brain is actually asking a question. When you pick up the first card that has an uppercase I on it, you're actually asking a question. You're saying, does this card have text on it? Or is this card an empty space? If this card has text on it, then I want to put it aside and put it together with whatever else is part of this word. If, however, it has a white space on it, so your eyes are checking, they're noticing, is this card having some visual text on it, or does it seem empty? And your brain does it so fast that you don't even realize the question your brain is asking, but you're actually wondering, is this card the one that's going to be empty, or is it not empty? So we have to translate this into the computer language now. If the current letter, any ideas? How do I check whether it equals to space? Very good. I see already an answer over there, which is almost correct. If the current letter equals space. Ah, very good. Thank you very much. Ha, you found the bug. See what this does over here? I warned you guys about this bug, if you guys remember this. The correct operator to use, and by the way, don't worry because of Remel, because everyone does this mistake all the time. You are, in Mirza Hashem, going to make a lot of money out of being called up in emergency as a programming. Hey, we need you to solve this bug. Something's broken in the system. You're going to spend several hours finding this one little bug, which is that instead of using equals equals to check whether something is equal, instead someone did a single equals, which assigns the value of space into the variable of the current letter. It's going to happen in your career. I can guarantee it. It happens all the time. This is the common mistake. So if the current letter equals to white space, if that's the character that we got out of this part of the string, so the first time around this is going to be wrong, right? Because the first time it's an I, the second time it's an apostrophe, the third time it's an M. The fourth time is going to actually be true here, because this character over here at this point is in fact, between quotes, an empty space. So if our thing is an empty space, then recognize that we finished a word and the next word should start capitalized. Okay, I'm just writing the text over here so that I know what I'm supposed to do later. Else, otherwise, if it's not the beginning of a word, then I just want to move along. Go on to the next card. I don't care about this one. Leave it in the string. Leave it as is. I don't want to do anything else about it. And so we can actually remove this else over here. We don't even really need the else. We're only doing something special when there is a space. So for right now, we're just saying, let's say we do this as a console log. Console log. I found a space. And actually, let's reintroduce the else so that anytime it's not a space, we're going to say, I found a character. Okay, actually, if we scroll down over here, we can see this page is eagerly trying to execute our code already. It's already calling the function, it's passing in this phrase, and it's going through our loop, and it's executing our code, and it's actually showing us the result. So this is pretty interesting. Our loop is having the effect of saying, I found a character, I found a character, I found a character, I found a space, I found a character, I found a space. And this makes sense, because if you look at our phrase, the first one is character, 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 space, character, space. And that's exactly the pattern we're seeing here. I, apostrophe, M, space, A, space. And so our code is actually working pretty well in distinguishing between which letter in going through our string one by one, piece by piece, which letter is in fact a character that has some actual text in it, versus which one is specifically the white space character of pressing the space bar. So now we can distinguish between the two, and we've proven it by logging out a message to the console showing us when you're in this situation, tell us this message, and when you're in that situation, tell us the other message, which, as we can see here, is working pretty well. And we could have some fun to debug this if this console actually allows us to debug, just so that we can step through it and see happening in real time. Let's see if he allows us to do that. No, he doesn't allow us to debug it over here on Free Code Camp. So let's take this over quickly to our console over here. Pop it out. And let's execute our code over here. Why don't we have a lot of space? For some reason this is popping. Oh, we need actually, okay, we're a little too zoomed in, that's why. And I can't zoom out. Here we go. Okay, here we go, we're starting our program. We're starting off by calling this function, passing in a string. Function got the string, and now it's going to try working with it. It starts looping through a number, starting from number 0, and we're going to go up to less than the string length. The string length is 20, and we're going to go up to that point, starting at 0. So the current letter is the letter I, because if we go into string and we take its letter number 0 in this case, the first letter is I. And now we're asking, the current letter that we just got, is it equals to white space? So actually our letter is an uppercase I. That is not equals to white space. So this turns out to be a false Boolean evaluation. The results of doing this calculation is false. This is not correct. So we go, instead of going into the if section, we go into the else section. Since it was false, we go into the else. So now we're going to log to the console, I found a character. And as we go through this loop step by step again and again, we can see it goes to the next character. This one is a character. The next one is a character. The next one after that, let's mouse over it and see. This looks like a white space. I see 2 double quotes, and at this point, this evaluates to true. Now we're in the if statement that results in being true. So we're going to do the if code and not the else code. That's how an if statement works. If something is true, it does the if. Otherwise, it could do the else. You can even make else if, and you can even make multiple else ifs, as we've learned about if statements. And we have finally run out of time. So I would encourage you guys to maybe continue this train of thought. Maybe I'll copy out this code and paste it on the Slack so you guys can take it from here and maybe continue this train of thought of like, what do I do now so that with every string that passes into this function, I can take the beginning of each word, the first letter that comes after each white space, and turn it into an uppercase letter. And a very important question here that I'll end off with is, why does it matter? How do you capitalize? So first of all, why does it matter? You will have situations in your websites where you're going to want to take some text and capitalize the first letter, or capitalize the first letter of the entire phrase, or capitalize the first letter of each word in a phrase. It's going to happen. And this is one possible way of how to do that. And not only that, but also all the skills about looping and about variables and about if statements that we're learning along the way, each and every one of them is very valuable for you to figure out what to do. How to capitalize is a very good question. I think there's no other choice but to use a function that exists in the browser. I don't think there's any. Well, actually, what you could do is you could make an array of all of the lowercase letters, and then you can make an array of all the uppercase letters. And then you can find where's the position of the lowercase letter and get its uppercase letter. And that's one way how you can do it manually. But if you want to take an easier way out and you've Googled it, then you'll find that JavaScript actually has a function called toUpperCase. And all it does is it's a magic function that you don't even have to know how it works or what it does. You just give it a string and it'll turn that string into uppercase. You can even give it a single letter and it'll turn that single letter into uppercase. So that's one option of how you can do this, by calling the strings dot toUpperCase function, and it'll turn whatever you give it into an uppercase, which in our case, you might give it, the first letter that comes out of each word. You're going to give it the I, which is already uppercase, so it's going to stay uppercase. You're going to give it the A, you're going to give it the L, and each one of them you're going to call toUpperCase on it, and it's going to turn it into uppercase. And the rest is history. Show me how well you guys can complete and finish this exercise with the code, which I'm going to paste on the Slack. See if you can figure out how to loop through the entire string, whatever string I put into it, even if it's a very, very long paragraph, every single word should end up having its first letter after a white space to turn into an uppercase letter. Good luck with that. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight, and looking forward to seeing you guys next time. We'll hopefully here on in kind of try to complete and wrap things up a little bit. There's 2 more classes, I think, left till the end. And hopefully we'll manage to cover a little bit more of JavaScript, a little bit more of jQuery, and a bit of an overview of the server side, the backend side of things. So looking forward to that. Thank you all again, and see you next time.